Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Dan Bates, Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining Coffee and Conversation. I think that we have an incredible track record of great experts and speakers, and I'm sure our speaker today is going to continue that reputation. So we are so glad you could join us today. We are on Facebook Live as well. If you're on Zoom, you can ask a question of the speaker. If you're on Facebook Live, make sure that you text in your question to Tiffany, and she'll repeat it to the speaker, and we'll address it on the call. So with that being said, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us, and I'm turning it back to Tiffany.
And I'm going to turn it back to Laura because I'm still going Facebook Live. Laura, will you do introductions?
Yep, we can definitely do introductions. Hey everybody, I am Laura Merrill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber. So glad you were able to join us today. I will just go across my screen here and have everyone introduce themselves, tell me your name and your company, and then we'll get started with our speaker here in a bit. So Judy, you're my first one, so you want to unmute yourself and tell us who you are?
Hi, I'm Julie, the Greater Hamilton Chamber of.
All right, Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Sandlin with the new company name called EmpowerWorks. I'm actually in my WealthWave office, which is a division of that. We do financial, residential design, and life design.
Tammy?
Tammy Walton, the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce.
Linda?
Linda Weil, M&G Body Shop.
Nancy?
Nancy O'Neill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
Jill?
Jill Cates with Easter Seals Career Connection, where we help young adults with some challenges engage, empower, educate, and employ through work experience and job training.
And Judy is a referral to our office from Easter Seals, so we are excited to have a partnership with you. Rhonda?
Good morning, I'm Rhonda Croucher with Primary Health Solutions, and we're a nonprofit safety net healthcare provider.
And Anne?
Hi, I'm Anne Arnett. I'm with Gateway Springs Health Campus.
And Tiffany, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yep, I'm Tiffany Grubb. I'm with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
So we're so glad everyone could be here. And Jeff, we will let you introduce yourself and be our presenter for today. We're excited to hear what's going on in the real estate market.
Oh boy, it's going to be interesting. So my name is Jeff Boyle. I am a realtor with Keller Williams. I have an office in Hamilton right downtown in the Renshaw building, and I have one out in Westchester. I've got a team of 3 licensed agents and 2 additional full-time employees that work with us and work with our clients. So it's interesting. When I was asked to do this, I thought, man, this could get really interesting with everything going on right now. So I'm going to keep it a little more informal. I do have a big list of stuff I want to discuss, but at any time, feel free to ask questions. Because if there's something that you want to know about what's going on in the market specifically, I want to make sure that that gets answered. So are there any questions that anyone has in mind right now that you want to make sure get answered today?
I have one, Jeff. I have one. I get conflicting reports that the real estate market is remaining surprisingly strong, and that it's in the toilet. So I assume it's somewhere in between. And it depends on which article you read, what it looks like. It seems, I know certainly with residential houses around me are not staying on the market very long, so. Yes, and I will certainly talk about that because that's a big indicator of what our market is right now. So I'm gonna start out with just some interesting stats about the industry itself. The typical realtor is a 54-year-old white woman with a college degree, and she's a homeowner. The average realtor sells about 11 houses a year. 80% of realtors are part-time. That is an industry standard.
I don't know if there's another industry out there that has a number of where 80% are part-time. 87% of new realtors are no longer in the business within the first 18 months to 2 years. So the fallout rate is almost 90% for new realtors. 33% of the market right now are first-time home buyers. That's a big segment of our market right now. 89% of buyers use a realtor to buy a house, and 89% of sellers use a realtor to buy their house. However, 92% of home sales in general have at least one realtor involved. And then one of the biggest challenges in our industry right now that we're facing is the privacy of our clients' data. There are a lot of big companies that own smaller companies that are in the real estate industry. And when we go and put in our clients' contact information into what we call a CRM, a contact management system, that system is owned by a lot of times a competitor, and they extract all that information out and use it for marketing purposes and sell it. I will tell you that Keller Williams is probably the only big brand where that does not happen. They do not partner with anybody that sells data or uses our clients' data. Gary Keller actually spent $1.3 billion over the last 6 years building a system that is completely private, so that doesn't happen. And that's all because we are going into what he calls the fourth industrial revolution, which is technology and artificial intelligence. So I'll get into that a little bit because that is drastically affecting our industry as many other industries. So the first thing I want to kind of go over is how has COVID-19 changed our industry? First of all, yes, the market has stayed pretty strong throughout all this. I would tell you that probably at any given time between 40% and 60% of our real estate market is need-based. It is a death in the family. It is a job transfer, a job loss, a divorce. It's someone that has to sell. So a segment of the market, no matter what the market is like, is going to move. That's just the way that's reality. However, what we found out during all this is as an industry, we were deemed essential, so we could continue to work. We did change how we did business. What we found out through all this is that surprisingly enough, our housing inventory actually dropped during all of this. And the amount of homes that were sold actually stayed relatively the same. It was only down about 4% in the Cincinnati area. And that happened strictly because there are some people that just did not want to put their house on the market. They felt uncomfortable. However, the buyers were still there. So just about any house that went on the market went pending pretty quick. So how have we changed our business? We've changed our business in a couple different ways. We now do or can do virtual showings. Those can be done multiple different ways. We do video of our listings, so someone can sit in the comfort of their own home and safety of their own home and watch a video of the inside and outside of the listing. The agent can go through on Facebook, on FaceTime or Zoom or any of these virtual showings and walk through the house themselves as the buyer's watching from wherever they're at. And they can say, I want to see over in that corner. I want to see over in that corner. What does that look like? So they don't even have to go into the house to see the house at this point. The showing procedures have changed. Our MLS used to allow overlapping showings. So 2 or 3 or 4 different agents could schedule a showing and all be in the house at the same time. As of right now, they do not allow that. They've cut showing times back to 30 minutes maximum, and one agent with their client in at any given time. That's for social distancing purposes. Just about 2 weeks ago, we were allowed to start holding open houses in person again. They shut those down for a period of time. And then safety precautions. It's up to the seller how they want to allow people to come through the house. If they require masks or gloves or booties, all of that can be required. The agent is notified ahead of time. And as they walk into the house, before you walk in or right when you walk in, there's typically some of that stuff available, or they'll tell you bring your own. So part of the challenge for us as realtors was getting that material, getting those supplies when this mandate came out. Just like anyone else, we were having trouble finding masks and gloves for our clients to wear. So everything has changed. It started to go back kind of partially, I guess. We are still doing a lot more video in our advertising. So it has changed how we market houses, and I think that's going to remain. I think buyers are more comfortable with the virtual showings than they have been in the past, and I think that will remain to a certain degree also. In the end, the buyers are still out there and our listings are low. Our housing inventory is extremely low. So with interest rates the way they are right now, even given everything that's going on, it's still an absolutely fantastic time to actually sell your house. The challenge is buying. If you got to sell and buy, that's where the challenge comes in, and I'll get into that a little bit. Does anyone have any questions about COVID-19 and how that affected what we do?
Once again, I do, Jeff. You had you referred to it with video and stuff like that, but what else have you learned during this that is actually a positive for the industry that will change your practices moving forward?
Well, I think using the video to market houses is going to stick around. Very few agents did it prior to this, and I think it's going to become the norm. People want to see video as opposed to just pictures. So I think with listings in general, you're going to start to see a lot more video advertising that's out there. And I think that's good, because if as fast as things are selling, it's a lot easier for a buyer to watch a video and get a better idea of the property and make a decision on whether or not they want to waste their time going out there to look at it or not. I think that's going to be a positive moving forward. There are some new technologies that are out there that I think may become mainstream. There is a company called Matterport, and what they do is you put a 3D camera inside every single room, and it stitches all of those pictures together and gives you a live floor plan that you can walk through the house by clicking little dots on the floor. So you can walk from the family room into the living room and then turn around 360 degrees, look up and down. Then you can walk up the stairs and look upstairs. You can literally walk through the house in a digital format. I think that's going to become more mainstream also. The other thing is people are becoming a little more comfortable with buying a house without actually going through it in person, which I find interesting. Do a virtual showing, and people are willing to put that money down and buy the house. When it comes to the home inspection and they walk through in person the first time, that's when we start to run into some issues with that. Tiffany?
Yeah, David Stark says, hi, Jeff. Would you say that sellers are able to get more out of their houses now because of the factors you mentioned? And if so, would you say 5%, 10%, 20%, or more?
What's the question? The amount that they're getting back?
Yeah, able to get more out of their houses now because of the factors you mentioned. Yes. What percentage would you say?
So yes, sale prices are high right now. They're really high, and interest rates are really low. And it really depends on the market itself and what. So it's funny when Dan mentioned earlier with his question about how he's read that the market is not good, and he's read other articles that it is good. Real estate is a micro market business. When you watch real estate stats on the news, you can just take those and throw them out the window because they don't apply to your market. Even inside Cincinnati, the market from Hyde Park to Hamilton to Ross to Mason, they're all different. Every market is different. So we'll sit down and we'll talk to a potential seller and they're like, well, my uncle over in Delhi just got this for his house. Well, then why don't you move to Delhi and sell a house? And that might apply. And it's just because every single market is different. So I can't give you a number there, but I can tell you that sale prices are really high right now. And I'll get into that just a little bit in a little more detail. So our current market conditions, this is a good segue. Housing inventory is extremely tight. And this is what I mean by that. We use a term called the absorption rate when we determine whether we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market. A balanced market, so a balanced amount of housing inventory, is 5.5 months to 6.5 months of housing inventory, okay? Historically, an extremely strong seller's market. So if you look back at 04, 06, 07, back in that time frame, we were about 3 months of housing inventory, okay? So about halfway to a balanced market. Right now, the city of Hamilton is at 0.7 months. So we have less than 1 month of housing inventory. And the way we look at that is if we stopped listing houses today, if we no longer listed them, how long would it take us to sell the existing inventory at the rate that we've been selling them over the last 6 months? Does that make sense? That's how we calculate the absorption rate. So we are under 1 month of housing inventory in the Hamilton market. And just about every market is either just under or just over 1 month. So when we talk about inventory, there's a couple reasons we're like this. This actually goes back to the crash of 09. We're still seeing those effects. So back during that last housing boom, builders were building houses at an extremely high rate, right? And they were building entry-level homes at a high rate. Well, when that market crashed, what builders learned is that they can build a $200,000 house in 6 months and make a 10% profit, or they can build a $400,000 house in 7 months and make a 10% profit. So they're no longer building entry-level homes, okay? That has tightened up and held up our entire market and probably will for the foreseeable future. And when I say that, here's the numbers. Builders would have to return to the rate at which they were building new inventory in 2006 and do that for 12 years before housing inventory in the entry-level market will be back to normal. So think about that for just a minute. How many homes are we short in that entry-level market? That is what's holding everything up. On top of that, the home buyers the first-time home buyers being 33% of the market, the ones that are there don't have anything to buy. That's why you see houses in the 100 to probably 225, 230 range. They're on the market for 6 to 8 hours sometimes, okay? What we've actually started doing is withholding offers for 3 or 4 days to give people time to actually go through and look at the house so it doesn't go pending in 6 hours. And some sellers aren't even taking the best offer. They're taking, depending on who the seller is, they might take one for less money because the terms are a little different. They might take one because they just have a good feeling about the family that wrote the letter on why they want the house and why they love the house. Because they're all getting a little more than what they thought they were going to get anyway, okay? So one of the biggest single issue is the lack of entry-level homes in our inventory, and that's going to hold things up for a long time. Overall, sales have not really slowed down significantly. Like I said, during the shelter in place, we were down about 4% sales volume. But since they've opened back up, that market has opened back up and we're at or where we're above or where we were before all this started. Average sale price in Butler County is up about 6% over where it was this month last year. Average days on market in Butler County is about 15 to 17 days right now. In the city of Hamilton, the average sale price is up 7% over last year. And average days on market in Hamilton is about 4 or 5 days, which is crazy low. If you look at entry-level homes in Hamilton, there's about 15 available right now in the entire city. That's an extremely low number. What are people looking for when they go to buy a home nowadays? This has changed over the last, I don't know, 5 to 7 years probably. And I think it's because buyers for years could not find anything. There was nothing on the market, and then it flipped drastically, and they had an abundance of homes that they could choose from, and they had leverage, and now we're flipped back drastically the other direction. So it's a very interesting market. We've never seen a seller's market with buyers that are as picky as they are right now. Typically in a seller's market, the seller has leverage, and they can say, you know what, if you want to fix that, you fix it yourself. Or if you don't like the carpet, you can put new flooring in after you move in. That's not the case. As low as the inventory is, if a home is, what buyers are looking for is move-in ready. They want to unpack their stuff, sit down, and go to their kids' sports. They don't have time to renovate a house. They don't want to deal with it. So when we sit down with a seller today in a market today, and they ask, what do I need to do to get my home sold? It's you need to get it like in great shape. Paint it, flooring needs to be in good shape. If not, a buyer will say, you know, I've waited 7 months to find a house. What's another 3 or 4 months if I don't buy this one? Not a big deal. The other thing we've seen in our current market is we've seen a lot of buyers that have the ability to purchase without selling their current home. Or they've sold their current home and moved into a temporary living situation so they could find the one that they want and not have to hurry and rush and get something they don't want to get into. And that's one of the contingencies that they don't have in their contract that makes their offer a little bit better than another one that might be coming in. 3 years ago, most offers were contingent upon a closing. We're not seeing a lot of that right now. Most offers are not contingent upon a closing. So they've either sold or they can purchase before they sell their current home. Interest rates are obviously driving the current market. As of yesterday, they were 2.99% on a 30-year fixed. Yeah, I'll say that again, 2.99% on a 30-year fixed. That is extremely low. I'm sure some of you remember the days when there was 7%, maybe 15%, some of you maybe even 20%. And we actually get people that say, I'm going to wait on the rates to drop a little farther before I do anything, which is kind of comical. So interest rates are extremely low. One of the changes we did see from COVID are the lending institutions have tightened their credit strings. The low end of credit that some lenders would approve used to be 580. 3 or 4 months ago, it was 580 credit score. It's hard to find anyone go below 640 right now. During the loan process, they are verifying employment multiple different times. It used to be right up front when you got your pre-approval, they would verify your employment. Now, just about everyone is doing it again within 3 days of closing because so many people have lost their jobs. We saw, just myself, I saw multiple of my listings that went under contract and the buyer lost their job during the closing process and weren't able to buy it. So lenders are checking and verifying employment within 3 days of closing to make sure that that hasn't happened. The amount of documents that banks are requiring to verify income, verify employment, verify assets has gone up. They're asking for basically a finger prick in your firstborn before they give you a mortgage. They will go down to 640, but they just want to verify everything. And I think a lot of these newer standards are going to hang around for at least 18 months to 2 years or until after there's a vaccine. And the banks are comfortable that they're not going to do shelter in place again, and there's not going to be another round of big layoffs. So as quick as the market has recovered, the lending market has not. they will stay as they are, or even get a little more strict as we move forward until we get out of this COVID-19 thing. You do not have to put, there's still a big misconception out there that you have to put 20% down to buy a house. I think most of you probably are aware that's not the case. You can put 3.5% down with an FHA loan, 5% down with a conventional loan. And the 20%, where people get that is that's where, when you put 20% or more down, that's where you don't have to pay the private mortgage insurance. There are options out there where you can put down 5% and buy out the private mortgage insurance for a small fee, and that can save you money down the road. But that typically comes with higher credit scores that they'll allow to do that. So that is something that we are having conversations with our buyers. You know, as low as rates are, don't put that down. Just put 5% down, buy out the PMI, and take the rest of that money and invest it somewhere where you can get a better return. That's an option for you. Money's cheap right now when you're borrowing money. So what are the challenges in today's market? Are there any questions out there so far? Nope. So what are the challenges in today's market? And those are different, obviously, for buyers and sellers. We've talked a little bit about this. For buyers, the challenge is the low inventory, 100% the low inventory. So what are we doing to address that? If you're working with an agent, you need to make sure you're working with an agent that's going to be out door knocking and making phone calls and actively trying to find you a house before it goes on the market. I said earlier, what happens when houses go on the market, right? They go in multiple offers, get 5, 6, 7 different offers on it. It sells for more than list price. If I can find you a house that you're happy with before it goes on the market, you don't have to worry about multiple offers. You don't have to worry about running over and dropping everything you're doing just to get in before the other 20 people get in. There's a lot of advantages to that. So there are, just like any industry, there are some agents that are out there that aren't doing that, and you need to make sure that you find one that is going to try and find something for you actively before it hits the market. You can save a lot of money that way by not getting into multiple offers. We are running into very stubborn sellers regarding the price. They just don't want to budge on their price, and in a market like this, they really don't have to. High average sale prices. The entry-level market, if first-time home buyers, I'm not going to say they're shut out of the market, but they're darn close. The few houses that sell for the high end of what they could possibly go for, and there aren't enough houses in that price range for the first-time market, because they can't find houses, and because the people that live in those houses can't find a house to buy. They're waiting to put theirs on, and that's tying up the entire market as it moves up the price line, the price chain. Just talked about this. Lending institutions are a lot more strict. And then the other struggle that buyers are running into is the home inspection. Sellers don't want to fix anything. They have 2 and 3 and 4 offers waiting behind the first one. So a lot of times buyers are, unless it's a safety item, a structural item, or a major expense, a seller's just going to say, you have to fix that yourself. And a buyer's most of the time going to have to be okay with that. Challenges for sellers. Well, the challenge for sellers is if we withhold offers for 3 or 4 days, you might as well go get a hotel room, because you're not going to be in your house. Remember, we're not allowing overlapping showings. So a lot of times, if it's in the right price range, from 8 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, they can't be in their house. It's full of showings. And if that happens for a couple days, like, where do they go? Where do they spend their time? They're worried about selling their house without a place to move. That's a big concern for sellers. Appraisals is a concern for sellers. If you look at how an appraisal is done, an appraiser looks at the previous 6 months, any sold home within the last 6 months. I will argue till I'm blue in the face that 3 to 6 months ago is not the market that we're in right now. So if an appraiser looks at a comp from 4 months ago, the price of it's going to be lower than it would be right now. 100% it would be lower. So that's a challenge. And then when you get 4, 5, 6, 7 offers come in and you sell for more than list price, we have to explain to the sellers that it still has to appraise for that price. If the appraiser comes in lower than this, we're going to have an issue, and you're probably going to have to go back down to where we told you were probably going to be to begin with. You might be surprised at how upset they get. If we put a house on for 160 and it sells for 180 and they got to go back to 165, they're mad because they lost $15,000. Well, we told you 160 because that's what the comps put it. So that's a struggle for sellers. Getting the home closed. I will tell you it's easier to sell a house today than it is to actually close a house. There are no less than 8 different parties that are involved in every single sale that have to approve that sale to allow it to close. You have the buyer, you have the seller, you have the buying agent, you have the selling agent, you have the home inspector, you have the appraiser, you have the bank, you have the title company. All 8 of those parties can at any given time put a stop to the sale, okay? There's a lot of coordination that goes on. If one person doesn't do their job, that could kill the entire deal and it could fall. There are dates and times in a purchase contract that have to be met. And if someone doesn't meet that date or that time, the seller can say, if the buyer doesn't meet that, one of their obligations, the seller can say, I have a better backup offer. I'm just withdrawing and going to the other offer. You didn't hit your loan commitment date. So there are dates in the contract that give a buyer and a seller an out if they want one, and they'll exercise it. So it takes a lot of coordination between those 8 parties to get houses closed nowadays. 30 to 45 days is average on a closing. It's about how long it takes to get things done. Where are we here? Any questions about the challenges for buyers or sellers? The other challenge for sellers I want to talk about real quick is I had mentioned where their house needs to look fantastic. It needs to be updated. It needs to be move-in ready. Has anyone tried to get a contractor over to their house recently to get a small job done? Was it hard? It's almost impossible to get a contractor to come out to your house and do a small job. They are so busy right now. They don't want to deal with that small job. If they do, they're going to make it worth their while. You're going to pay a premium to get it done. So that is a challenge for sellers. Now, if we have some contractors that we send enough business to where we can get them in at a reasonable time, but it's still more of a challenge than it's been for a while. So that's across the market. Tiffany.
David Stark asks, is there any way to navigate around having all 8 players involved?
So there are most deals, I would tell you no. But if it's a cash deal, there's no lender involved. So you don't have to worry about the lender. If there is only one agent involved, that removes one person. If you don't want to do a home inspection, that removes a home inspector. So yes, the answer to that would be yes. However, it's uncommon. Typically, all 8 of those people are involved. Does that answer that question? Okay. Where's the market going from here? So we're headed to a shifting market. All I've done to this point is talk about how good the market is, right? Look at the job market. Over 40 million people have lost their job over the last 3 months. The unemployment rate went from 4% to over 15% in 3 months. Anybody that doesn't think that's going to affect the real estate market at some point needs to do a little more research. That is going to affect the market 100%. We don't know how quick, But at some point, the fact that there's 40 million people that were out of a job is going to affect us. It's going to change our market. Forbearances went from 0.19% to over 8% in the last 3 months. So a forbearance, if everyone knows what a forbearance is, a forbearance is when someone calls their lender and says, hey, I lost my job. I can't make my mortgage payment. I want to put my loan in the forbearance for 3 months. Okay? Sounds like a great deal. The problem is the way a forbearance works is after that 3 months, you have to catch everything up to date. It's not that you start to pick up your mortgage payments in 3 months again. It's you have to make the past 3 mortgage payments plus the 4th to catch yourself up. For someone that was out of work for 3 months, are they going to be able to do that? Probably not. So to get out of a forbearance, you have 2 options. You either catch it up to date or you go into a loan modification. And a loan modification typically is not a good thing to go into. So these 8.5% of people that are in a forbearance right now, you're going to start seeing those end sometime soon. And they're either going to have to pay up to date or they're going to have to modify their loan, which could be foreclosure. Just to go through a modification, there's a lot of things that have to happen. A lot of banks aren't really willing to do a modification without extreme circumstances. We'll see what they consider extreme circumstances. We don't know what that's going to be yet, but that could be a pretty big deal. And we don't know when that's going to hit. If we go into a second wave of this and we go into shelter in place again and people start to lay off again, it's just going to compound this entire thing. Okay. So our market is shifting. It's going to shift from a seller's market to a buyer's market. It could take a month. It could take 1.5 years, but it's going to happen. And it's going to be a result of what's going on right now. The younger generation in our market and moving forward is the hardest hit. They were hit pretty bad in the unemployment segment, on top of the fact that a lot of those houses weren't there to begin with for them. So they're moving back home, they're renting. Rental rates are higher right now than they've been in a long time. You can buy a house for cheaper than you could rent a smaller apartment. And they don't really have the option to buy right now for either because they can't, they're priced out of the market, they don't have a job, they haven't been able to find a job when they got out of school. And that's going to be an issue moving forward. And that's one that's going to be around for a while. So that market's, again, it's going to shift. It's going to turn to a buyer's market. We don't know how fast. It's going to change from the high end of the market down. That's when a market shifts from a buyer's to a seller's market or vice versa. It starts at the luxury price range and starts to work its way down the price range. Well, if you look at the luxury market, which in the Cincinnati area is considered about 700,000 and higher, average days on market is over 6 months. Okay, remember I said earlier, we're at like 0.7. That's the difference. That's the shift that's starting to happen. You'll see that go down to 500,000, then you'll see it go down to 300,000, then you'll see it drop to 150,000 and just slowly work its way down the price range. It started, we just don't know the rate at which it's going to happen. So keep an eye on that. Right now, it's probably one of the best times ever to sell, at least in the 10 years I've been doing this. And I know agents that have been doing it for 20 years, and they say the same thing. Interest rates at 3%. There's a bunch of buyers out there. There's no inventory. If you can figure out the buying part of it, there's no way you should not sell your house right now if you're thinking about it. Okay? Any questions so far about the market or anything I've talked about?
I have a random question.
Yes.
So one of the number one probably comments, this is Hamilton specific. Mm-hmm. One of the questions or comments that I get a lot is, in preparation for Spooky Nook, you know, not me personally, but I'm saying this from a perspective of questions. You know, we're thinking about, you know, buying a house and making it an Airbnb, or we're thinking about investing and flipping.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for that, for our market, specifically for, you know, buying property, flipping it, turning it into an Airbnb, or using as rental property?
So yes, I do, and we're actually seeing that happen. It's been happening for about a year now. So there's a couple of issues. First of all, you're not getting a deal on anything right now. Okay. The second thing is, I am always a proponent of buying real estate. If you look at how most people make a lot of their money, it's through real estate. Okay. It's one of the safest investments in the long term. However, where we see people get into trouble when they try to buy a home and be a landlord is they don't understand how that actually works. It sounds great. Buy a home, your mortgage payment is $700, you rent it out for $1,100, you're making $400 a month, right? Sounds awesome. And it is, if you're prepared and you know how everything works. So to be a landlord, there are expenses that you have to pay. There are repairs that you have to pay, okay? When you get a phone call from a tenant that says the toilet is clogged at 3:30 in the morning, you got to go fix it. Where we run into issues with landlords is they don't understand the amount of work that goes into being a landlord. Okay, they don't understand the problems you run into when the tenant doesn't want to pay the rent and the process you got to go through to fix that. There's, just like anything else, when people do a job, a specific job, they're probably better at it than the people that don't do that job. Would you agree? I can't come and do the job that you do as well as you do it, all right? There's a reason there are property managers out there. There's a lot of liability in managing properties. There's a lot of work in managing properties. There's a lot of expenses. What we find is someone that goes and buys one house and they start to rent it out and they take that $400 a month and they go buy a boat and then the furnace goes out and they don't have the money to replace the furnace. Like, that's a problem, okay? Airbnb is an entirely different market. The amount of work that goes into an Airbnb is probably 4 times the amount that goes into a long-term rental. And we'll use short-term rentals so we don't advertise Airbnb. So short-term rentals are, in my opinion, fantastic, and here's why. A lot of people have the opinion that a short-term rental, you're going to have a lot of people moving in and out of the house on a regular basis. The neighbors aren't going to like it. You're going to run into all kinds of noise issues. The reality is, in a short-term rental, that short-term rental house is usually the nicest one on the street, okay? Because the way short-term rentals work, they are 100% based on reviews from people that stay there. If the house doesn't look nice when they pull up to stay, the review isn't going to be good. If they get inside and the house isn't nice and they're going to be there for 3 days, the review isn't going to be any good. If the Wi-Fi goes out at 7 o'clock at night and you're not there for 24 hours to fix it, the review's not going to be any good. And you're not going to get people come and stay at your Airbnb. So that's where all the extra work comes in on an Airbnb. The grass has to be cut. The floors have to be swept. The windows have to be cleaned. The toilets have to be cleaned every time someone goes in and out. So there's a whole lot of work that goes in Airbnb that doesn't go into a long-term rental. And people just need to understand that before they get in the situation where they're over their head. That's what property management companies are for. Lisa, you have a question?
Yeah, I own several pieces of rental property. And so a couple years ago, my plan was to convert them to Airbnbs. And I ran the numbers, and it's unbelievable with the amount of rents that I'm getting today.
Mm-hmm.
To convert to Airbnb, I would have to have over a 50% occupancy rate at all times to do it, because as the flips start occurring, if you have people coming in every few days, your expenses go up dramatically because of the upkeep, the maintenance, the cleaning, the everything that has to go into that. So anybody that's thinking about doing that as a long-time 30-year landlord, I would say you really have to sit down, do a business plan, run the numbers. And in the market today, I still think long-term rental is better than a short-term for where we're at.
I would completely agree with you that the amount of work that goes in, the amount of work and expense is much more. And an Airbnb can bring in 3 to 4 times the amount that a long-term rental can for the same property if it's in the right place. It has to be in the right place, okay? You should figure an occupancy rate above 70%. If you're below 70%, you're either not in the right place, you're not doing a good enough job keeping it nice, and the reviews aren't good, is why people aren't staying there. You should figure a 70% occupancy rate is on the low end of where it should be, okay? In the end, if you're in the right place and you take care of it and you market it correctly and you get good reviews, you can get a 3 to 4 times return over what a long-term rental can bring in. That's a big return. However, there are more expenses. If you're gonna be someone that runs Airbnbs, you need to find a cheap, reliable cleaning crew that's gonna go in and clean the house every time someone moves out. Maybe hire somebody and have them on staff. Like Lisa said, it's a business like anything else. You need to create a business plan. You can't just hop in and be like, oh, I want to be a landlord and go buy a house and then wing it. You're going to get yourself in trouble if you do that. We're starting to see a lot of that. And it's because of Spooky Nook. And we're seeing a lot of people buy them and they're long-term rentals now, and they plan on flipping them to Airbnbs. That is 100%. We're seeing people go down Main Street and buy buildings down Main Street on anything they can get their hands on right now. And they're just going to sit on them and do nothing until Spooky Nook opens up. We're seeing people buy houses down there on Ray Avenue and that whole neighborhood between there and Eden Road because it's by Spooky Nook. So that is certainly changing the market in Hamilton, without a doubt. Any other questions on that? That's a good question, because you're going to see a lot more of that in Hamilton. Remember, if you want to be a landlord, that's great, but you should hire a property manager.
Jeff, I have a question. It's not about that, but it's, you know, I know the banks have a lot on their minds right now with, you know, SBA and PPP and all these kinds of loans and, you know, everything they've been through. But, you know, you said that forbearance is not something that they like to go into. But at the same time, it seems to me the foreclosure could be disaster. You know, I know years ago in the last downturn, there were tons of foreclosures that needed a lot of work. You know, and the banks ended up unloading a lot of those at huge losses. So I guess my question is, are they not wanting to look at that? Are they looking at the future? Are they saying, a loan modification? Maybe we need to be a little more friendly and put those payments on the end of the mortgage instead of having to catch up? Or are they just waiting to see what happens and we're going to go into a huge potential market full of foreclosures?
So here's my opinion. I am by no means an economist, and I don't know if there's anyone in here from a bank. If there is, I'm going to ask for forgiveness here ahead of time. Banks run on regulations. They run on a piece of black and white paper and whatever is written on them. They're not allowed to look at that and say, you know what, in this case, it makes sense. We need to go ahead and forgive 3 months and put it on the back. If the rule on the piece of paper doesn't say they can do that, they can't do it. The only way that's going to change is if there are some kind of regulations brought down from state or federal government telling banks that this is how you need to handle this. Other than that, we run into it all the time in this market, not in this market. When someone gets in a situation like that, it's whatever regulation is written on the piece of paper that they're reading that they have to follow. I'll give you an example. We have one that we're working on, and I'm not going to give any personal information out here, but we have a buyer that's cleared to close on their house, and due to the situation they were in, there's about $25,000 in late fees on the mortgage, okay? After all their expenses, they have to bring $10,000 to closing. So we went back to the first and second lien holder to see if we can get them, between the two of them, to reduce their late fees by about $5,500 each, okay? Then they get the banks get half of their late fees, all of their principal. The buyer gets in the house, the seller gets out of the situation they're in, and everybody's good. The second lien holder says, we can't do it. We can't do it. We have to go through an entire short sale process, and we'll have to see if the investor allows it, okay? If that happens, the seller's gonna walk away and then it'll go into foreclosure. So the bank can get all their money this week, plus some of the late fees, or they can get absolutely nothing in the end. And it's gonna be nothing. They've told us, the second lien holder said, we can't do it. And we have to get investor approval. That's 30 to 45 days out. We have to go through our process. That's what we run into with banks. So as far as the forbearance goes, you know, it might be a saving grace for some people. They just need to understand what they're getting into and understand that the bank doesn't work on logic sometimes, and it's not that they don't care, it's their hands are tied given the situation that the seller is in or the homeowner is in. They just have to follow the rules that are in front of them. That's where we run into issues a lot of times with mortgages like this. Nancy?
There is a question in the chat. Jane wants to know about selling as is without the updates. What are your thoughts on that?
It's totally fine to do that. You'll just take a hit on the sale price. So here's how this works. When a buyer walks in and sees that the carpet it needs to be replaced, it's in good shape, but it's old. That carpet might cost $2,500 to get installed. In a buyer's mind, it's $5,000. They don't want to underestimate how much it's going to cost. They want to make sure they have that cost covered. So everything, I mean, when they walk in and they see a light fixture that doesn't work because the light bulb's burn out, they think it's $150 because they got to replace a light fixture, because that's the safe thing to do. And if the seller is okay with taking a big hit like that on the sale price, that's their decision, but that's what will happen. Any other quick questions? So we have just a couple minutes. I'm going to talk about one of my biggest frustrations about the real estate market. Okay, I'm going to hop on a soapbox here for just a minute. We're seeing this now more than we have in the past, just in the last couple months because of the way the market is. People that sell their houses without an agent. Okay, let me give you some numbers here. A house that's sold by a real estate agent sells for 12 to 15% more than a house that's sold for sale by owner. Remember, you're only paying 6 or 7% in a commission. So you're going to net more money if you hire the right agent. And let me give you some examples. We recently saw someone put a house on by themselves. It sold it for $365,000. I had a buyer that would have paid $400 for it. Okay. That's that's $21,950 that they left on the table after paying commissions because they were trying to save a commission. Okay. We had another person that tried to sell their house by themselves for $180,000 for 30 days. We sold it for $225,000 in 4 hours. Okay. The problem is when someone tries to sell their house by themselves, they're not exposing it to everybody that's out there on the market. And if you think about a triangle that we call the buyer pool, okay, those are all the people that are interested in buying your home, all right? Obviously in the bottom of the triangle, say there's 20 people across the bottom row, that triangle goes to a point on the top, right? So there's one person at the top. The higher the price goes, the less people there are that are willing to pay for it. Does that make sense? So when we put a house on, we have to expose it to everybody out there to find those 1 or 2 people that are willing to pay the most amount of money for the house. That's why a seller that sells their house by themselves that doesn't expose it to all the different people out there, they leave money on the table. They literally net less money than they would if they would have paid a commission to an agent that could expose it to everybody. And I absolutely, I hate seeing somebody leave $20,000 or $30,000 on the table. It breaks my heart to see somebody sell their house themselves for that much less money. It really is frustrating to watch. We had another lady that sold she was trying to sell her house for sale by owner for $200,000 and got it sold, well, got it under contract. And the deal fell apart with a week left before closing. And she was frustrated. She called us. We sold it for $225,000 in 3 days. Okay. And we didn't tell her to put any money into the house. She literally would have left $13,000 on the table if that house would have closed. So that's one of my biggest frustrations. If you're thinking about selling, just meet with an agent. Okay. I'm telling you, if you hire the right agent, you will net more money. Not make more, you'll net more in the end than you will if you try and sell it yourself. Does marketing work? Marketing 100% works. There's a reason people pay big money for marketing, because they're trying to find the right people that are willing to pay for the product. That's how real estate works. You have to find the 1 or 2 or 3 people that are out there that absolutely love your house the way that it is, and they're not going to want to put a bunch of money into it once they move into it, because that's who's going to pay top dollar. Anybody can sell it for 20% less than what it could go for, given the right person find the house and buy it, right? That's one of my biggest frustrations. One of my other frustrations are realtors that aren't available for their clients. Whether that's they're on vacation and they're not getting somebody to cover their business for them. If they're working a full-time job and can't answer their phone in the daytime, it is a complete disservice to their client, okay? When we send an offer to somebody and we get a response back that says, I'm at my other job, I can't talk till later on tonight, that's a problem for the seller. So just be careful when you choose to hire somebody, and ask if they're full-time and ask if they're gonna be available. When I go on vacation, I got people that'll cover my business. And every agent should do the same thing. And the last thing I want to talk about, when you work with a financial advisor and they give you a suggestion on maybe a bank that you should use or some kind of service that you should use, do you listen to them? Do you listen to their advice? Most of the time I'd say yes. That's what they're hired for, okay? When you go to a doctor and the doctor gives you some advice, do you follow it? Most of the time the answer would be yes. Listen to your realtor, please. If they tell you you need to use this lender, use that lender. There's a reason, okay? We're not allowed to get kickbacks. If I'm making money off my lender, I can lose my license. I refer my lender out because I know he does a fantastic job. I know his rates are good. I know that he's going to follow up and communicate well. I know he's going to do his due diligence up front and make sure there are no issues in the end. Okay, there's a reason that real estate agents, as with any industry, partner with certain people, because we sell about 80 houses a year. If that lender doesn't do a good job for me, am I going to continue to give him that much business? No. So keep that in mind. If a realtor says, at least have a conversation with this lender, use one of these 2 or 3 home inspectors, just at least have the conversation with them, because there's a reason they're being referred out. Tiffany?
Darla has a question. She said, what are the best tips in selecting a real estate agent?
If you get me, what I'll do is I will email you a list of questions to ask when you're interviewing realtors, and you can send it out to everybody. The first question is, are you full-time? Should be your first question. Second question should be, How many houses a year do you sell? I will argue if an agent doesn't sell at least 12 houses a year, they're not in tune with the market enough to be able to give you that good of advice. They need to be in business, and they need to be active, and they need to be selling houses and actually walking through houses so they can get a good understanding of what the market is like. If you're selling 4, 5, 6 homes a year, you're just not out there enough to know what's going on. Okay? Ask about their communication process. How often are you going to update me and tell me what's going on with the sale of my house? If you're a buyer looking for a buyer's agent, ask them, what are you going to do to help me find a house? Are you just going to sit back and wait on the MLS to send listings my way? Or are you going to actively go out and see if you can find something for me? But I will be more than happy to send you that list of questions that you can send out to everybody, because you should interview a couple different agents. Just because your cousin Sally is an agent and sells 3 or 4 houses a year, remember that could cost you $20,000 on the sale of your house. Are you that good of friends with Sally? It really does make a difference. Just like any other industry, not all realtors are the same. There are good ones, there are not so good ones. There are people that are active, there are people that are inactive. Selling a house, that's one of the biggest transactions that you're going to do in your lifetime. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of liability involved. Make sure you find somebody and get somebody that is active and that does enough to be in tune with the market. When we sell 80 houses a year, we are negotiating more than a contract a week. How many houses do you think we walk into as we're showing houses and we're selling 80 houses a year? When somebody looks at me and says, my house is nicer than that one, I can say, no, it isn't, and here's why. They didn't show this in the picture, but they missed capturing this. This is why that house sold for $10,000 more than what yours is going to sell for. Okay, that's part of learning what the market's like. So you need an active agent that really knows what's going on. They're the ones going to be able to get you top dollar for your house or get you into a house for a good deal. It really does make a difference. Yeah, Dan?
I think you had said that 80% of the workforce is part-time.
Yes.
When you started out. So, and now you're saying, really see if that person is part-time. So my question is, what determines full-time, part-time with a real estate agent? Just because they don't have another obligation or what?
Let me clarify. I don't necessarily have a problem with a part-time real estate agent as long as they do their job. If they are active and they are following up with their client and they're answering their phone, I have no problem with a part-time real estate agent. What I'm going to call part-time is if you're at another job full-time and you don't have access to your clients and you can't answer your phone call, that's what I'm going to consider part-time. Okay? Because there are some part-time agents that do a good job because they're at a job where they have the flexibility to take a phone call. And they're okay. Here's the other problem with what I'm going to call a part-time agent is they're at work all day. And then they come home and they don't feel like working at night also because they've been working all day. So they don't return phone calls or they don't want to go out and show houses. If you're a buyer right now and you're working with an agent that is sitting at a job between 8 and 5, you're not getting a house. There's no way. It's gone before you're able to get into it. They've got to be able to be flexible and leave their job and go show a house during the daytime. Any other questions? That's all I have. I enjoyed our conversation today. I will email those questions to ask an agent when you're interviewing an agent out to Tiffany. If she wants to send it out, she can do that.
Great. Yeah, I'll forward that to all of the attendees, and we'll figure out a way to post that as a comment on the Facebook event or Facebook feed. So
yes, I'll be happy to do that.
Jeff. That was great information, and we really appreciate you being on today.
Thank you very much. Everyone, enjoy the day. It's supposed to be hot and humid again.
Thank you, Jeff. You continued our list of outstanding presenters. So thank you.
Thank you very much. You all have a good day.
You too.
Bye.